Major League Baseball trading deadline is today. Yesterday, I had a chance to catch up with Robert Fish, outstanding baseball fan. He has covered the Richmond Braves for many years and does a lot around the Richmond area and keeps his finger, on the pulse of Major League Baseball. Robert joined me to talk trade deadline talk. What about Cliff Lee? Are the Phillies going to make a run? What do the Nationals need to do? Ichiro to the Yankees? So much to get to with Robert Fish on the Sports Buffet podcast. Let's talk some Major League Baseball with Robert Fish. Hard to find Major League Baseball fans to Robert's level nowadays, but we got one here. The Washington Nationals, Robert, last time we talked, they were in first place, still rolling. I said, do we need to be worried about the Phillies coming up? I think that is way dead and buried now. The Phillies look like they are not going to be making any type of run this year. Are you surprised it still hasn't turned on, even with the people coming back from injuries for Philadelphia?
I'm not really. Because I think that the guys that came back certainly had a lot. Ryan Howard's starting to hit a little bit, and Chase Utley really don't know what you were going to have when he came back. But Philly's problem in some ways has been pitching, and Hamels and Halladay and even Cliff Lee to some extent. They haven't pitched the way that they did the year before, and they haven't pitched the way people thought they would. And now they've dug such a big hole for themselves. I just don't think they can come back. I saw some tweets a couple of weeks ago. They went in and swept the Brewers, and the Brewers aren't very good either.
Right.
They just traded Greinke, and then they're just not very good. And they lost Prince Fielder, and that's one reason why. But you see some tweets about, the Phillies, look out, they swept the Brewers. And my thing was, well, let's hold off a minute here now. They got to play the Braves for 3 this past weekend, as we talk, and they just got swept by Atlanta. Then they're going into Washington starting on Tuesday the 31st of July. So let's see what happens in those series before we start crowning the Phillies as the comeback kids. And they're going to need, if they do come back, and I didn't think they were then after the Brewers sweep, and I don't think they are now. It's just too big a hill to climb. They're 14, 15 games under 500, and they're 16 games back in the standings. Now, they could catch the wild card maybe 10 games back, but they would need a Braves-type collapse like last year. And I think when the Cardinals made their run, they were still around 500. The first thing Philly has to do is get back to the 500 mark. If they get back to the 500 mark, then maybe we can start talking about a wild card with them. But they'd have to go I think something like 40-something and 15 over their last 60-some games to win 90 games, and I don't think they can do that.
And even with the addition of a wild card, I still don't think they can. I don't think they can get one of 2 spots.
No, right now it's Atlanta and Pittsburgh, and I don't see, and I could be wrong, certainly, I don't see either one of those 2 teams collapsing. The Pirates just went out and got Wandy Rodriguez. They may make another move for, we'll see about that, but at this point, I just don't see that big collapse coming, and of course I didn't see it last year with Atlanta and St. Louis either, but I don't see it, and I think that's what the Phillies need more than anything else. And even if it is, I don't know that the Phillies can really put that much together. And, now as we talk, we're right on this trade deadline. They have to decide if they're selling or buying, and they apparently have decided neither one at this point, although Hunter Pence's name is out there, and Shane Victorino's name is out there, and a couple others. So, I don't know. I just don't see it with them. They may prove me wrong, certainly in 2 months' time, but at this point, I'd say no.
If you could afford Cliff Lee, would you go get Cliff Lee if you were a team, i.e. maybe the Texas Rangers or somebody like that?
Well, I think it would depend on the cost. Obviously, he's been traded a lot in the last couple of years, and when he's been dealt, he's been a huge help to the team that picks him up. I'd have to consider it, depending on what was being asked for. Obviously, that's the big caveat to any trade. Mm-hmm. But, I would consider his type of arm. He hasn't pitched to, again, the level, and that's why the Phillies have been in the boat they were in some extent. They couldn't score in the earlier part of the season because they had Howard and Utley out, and then the pitching went south. But I think I would. I'd give it a shot if I thought it would help my team. I don't know how many of the teams that are in the positions they're in right now, especially in the division leaders and the wild cards, would need that guy. The Braves need a pitcher. I think they need another pitcher. I think they know that. But I don't think they want to do another Mark Teixeira deal. You look at the Texas Rangers, who've got 3 or 4 All-Stars on that team that came over from Atlanta in the Teixeira trade. And Atlanta really got nothing out of it.
Yeah, I think that makes the Braves really gun-shy, like you mentioned, even though it is a different, I think, regime in there now. Last week I got a text from a buddy of mine and said, wow, I didn't see that coming with Ichiro, and I hadn't turned on the TV yet, and I'm like, what, did he retire or something? And then seeing he got traded to the Yankees really took it out of left field for me. What do you think about that acquisition on maybe the Yankees side, and does Ichiro have anything left in the legs of his?
I think he's got something left. I think what we need to look at and realize is maybe he's more of a, and this is hard to see because he's been so great over the years, but he might be more of a complimentary player now. Mm-hmm. And he certainly carries a huge name. I think it's a good pickup for the Yankees because now you're not going to overexpose Andrew Jones. You're not going to overexpose Raul Ibanez in the outfield and at the plate. They can go back to being, they don't have to play every day, and they can be more contributors. And I think that's what Ichiro is going to be. He'll get out there and play some outfield, and he's got a little bit left, certainly. He's not what he was, but I think it's a good pickup for them. I think they went out and did the job they needed to do to pick up somebody, and they seem to do that at the deadline. Pick up a player or two here or there that they need, and why not? I mean, Ichiro's a pretty solid player. The Mariners are ready to cut ties and move on, and it takes Seattle out of the awkward position of having a superstar like Ichiro and having to decide what to do with him when his contract's up, because they don't want to tie into him now because, what was he, 30 when he won Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I think he's 38, 39 now.
Yeah, so it takes them out of a pretty awkward position, too. So both sides make a deal that's agreeable and should help both sides out.
You touched on Zach Greinke earlier. First off, I thought Doug Melvin really I'm not a big fan of saying we're going to trade this guy before the deadline because I think you lose a little bit of your bargaining power, even if everybody else knows you're going to trade him. But I think you lose maybe what you could get back a little bit. But secondly, I didn't see him going to the Angels. What did you think of the whole movement?
Yeah, I didn't see that either. And what complimented it was Greinke's little shutdown there right before the deadline. He didn't pitch one or two outings there, at least one. And with Greinke, I mean, he's pitched well for Milwaukee during the last, a year and a half or so that he's been over there, maybe
right.
Two. But you don't know, that other thing that rears its head with him is that, that little anxiety disorder that he has, and you just don't know when that's going to rear its ugly head. He seems to straighten that out some, but, now, and he pitched well and under pressure last year, so hopefully he's gotten that under control. I don't know that I saw it being the Angels. I think there was a lot of talk with, the Braves were interested and maybe a couple others, but that's what happens during this trade deadline time. You don't know really who's involved. You see a lot of things, and some of that smoke screen that the GMs will throw out there to the writers to give them something to talk about, and just kind of shovel your attention in a different direction, the old magician's trick. So, good pickup for the Angels. He pitched well to Greinke the other night, and it really gives them a nice formidable rotation now, too, to take them into the playoffs. Like Detroit picked up Anibal Sanchez, who did not throw well in his first game with Detroit, but, they're loaded with Verlander and Fister and Sanchez now. So both those teams have made good moves to pick up solid players to help them out.
Yeah, and you touched on your Twitter about are the only two teams that are on ESPN, the Yankees and the Red Sox, because it seems like every time they play each other, they get on ESPN. But those are the only two teams to where I see if Greinke got traded to, that's major anxiety, because, with the Angels being on the West Coast, even though a lot of people have taken notice and, a lot of people know what the Angels are about, I don't think it's the same, big-time pressure. So I think Greinke, and even self-admitted, he says he does not want to pitch for the Yankees or, probably for the Red Sox too, but I think the Angels consider him okay.
There's an old saying, I guess, that I used to have years ago, a little poster that said half of being smart is knowing what you're dumb at.
Right.
I think Greinke is kind of maybe figuring that out a little bit and stay away from Boston, stay away from New York. And the Angels aren't really, they win, and they'll have some pressure on them, certainly, as any first-place team did. But he handled that in Milwaukee last year. So, and hopefully he's straightened out whatever little anxiety thing that was with him. It seems that he's gotten a handle on that. So that's good. I hope he does well. I think he's done a great job for the Brewers, and I think he's also a good start with the Angels. But, yeah, you're right. You don't want to be in that New York pressure cooker. I mean, when I went up to that Nats game a couple of weeks ago, almost a month ago now, I guess, when they were playing the Yankees, maybe farther back, it's just a different dynamic in that clubhouse when you go in as a media member. And, you would not, a friend of mine who works up in Washington and Baltimore and covers baseball every day, he said, I would not want this beat. Speaking of working and covering that every day.
Right.
Because it's just totally different. It is different. You got to get in there and talk to Jeter, and maybe he's not talking, or A-Rod, or somebody like that. And there's so many people in there when the clubhouse is open. It's a totally different dynamic all the way around in many, many ways. And some players, just when they go there, they can't handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could probably do a whole nother podcast of naming a list of people that just can't play in New York or Boston or other big cities. Final question for you, Robert, as always. Appreciate your time, kind of just brainstorming. What team do you really think needs to make a move, and what team that's talking about making a move maybe doesn't need to make it as much in your eyes?
Well, I think you hear, let's start with the one that needs to make a move. I think there's probably two that need to make a move in the National League. I think the Atlanta Braves probably need to find a starting pitcher somewhere. Now, Ben Sheets has been really good. I don't know how long that's going to last, but his starts have been really good when they picked him up. So maybe that's a move, but they might need to make another one if they can find a starter somewhere. That they might need to add on to that. I think the Cardinals might need to make a move if Jaime Garcia can't come back. Maybe they've got to pick up a starting pitcher somewhere. The problem is it looks like Tampa Bay has pulled James Shields back a little bit, so they may not move him. And then the only one left there is Josh Johnson of the Marlins, or maybe another secondary type of pitcher that can come in and help you in the stretch run. On the other side, maybe look for Oakland to make a move. They've been playing really well. They probably need another piece or two here or there. Teams that don't need to make a move, maybe you hear them talking about it. You hear a lot of talk about the Reds, but I don't know that they need to make a move. They look pretty solid. There's talk about them maybe trying to pick up a Denard Span or looking at a Juan Pierre type.
Right.
Give him a leadoff hitter to play center field. But a lot of that will be determined with what Billy Hamilton does. Whether he's going to be their leadoff guy down the road, and then do you want to get tied into somebody? So, and the Nationals, I don't think they need to make a move at all. I think everybody's been kind of concurrent on that you don't need to make a move. They really don't seem to have any holes right now. Sure, they're going to shut Strasburg down, and we don't know when that's going to happen, and we could spend a whole hour talking about that.
I think that's the only move you need to make is not to shut him down or somehow figure out how you can, kind of keep him around for the playoffs, because I do not like the Nationals' chances if they shut him down for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. And John Lanning came up and pitched really well on the one start he got, and I think that was expected. And I think that's the guy they're going to turn to when they have to get another starter in there. He did a really good job, and he's got a track record. So, they may be good enough to get 5 or 6 innings out of somebody without having to make a trade and hand it over to what's a rock-solid bullpen, especially with Drew Storen back now. I mean, Henry Rodriguez is the only hole in the bullpen, and they're trying to limit his exposure. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. As we talk here, we're right on that deadline, and we'll see. There's just not a lot out there, Bob. If you look at all the trades that have been made, and there's not much left to deal. There's some small deals here or there, and that's about it. So we'll see if anything big happens.
And, it's kind of like you touched on earlier. I don't remember in recent memory of where this many deals have happened so far ahead of the deadline, like the Wandy Rodriguez, the Ichiro. We could go on and on. It's normally like they're happening, that day, because watching MLB Network and baseball tonight used to be fun on the day of the deadline, but according to Buster Olney last night, he doesn't think there's going to be a lot of movement. So keep your Tuesday free, I guess, this year.
It may not be. I mean, there's still talk of Hunter Pence, the Giants, supposedly this morning.
Right.
And as we're talking here, there was a little rumor that the Giants had a deal for Hunter Pence, but nobody knows what's coming back. It could involve a player here for the Flying Squirrels in Richmond, maybe outfielder Gary Brown, who's a speedy leadoff type center fielder prospect that can really run. But I'm just speculating in that regard that he might be involved. So Victorino may go, but there's not a lot of big names. Tampa pulling Shields back, maybe not getting what they want. And a lot of these teams are asking for a lot for these trades. And that may be, like we talked about the Atlanta Teixeira deal. That's holding the Braves back. They don't want to make that mistake again and give up some guys who could be really, really good.
And if I'm the Phillies, I don't want to get rid of Hunter Pence, especially when I have him under control for next year. So, anyway, Robert, we'll review all this in a week or so. And as always, love having you on the Sports Buffet podcast. Take care.
All right, Bob. Always a pleasure, and look forward to talking with you soon. Thanks.